Creeper on my roof. So this happened when I was about 16 or 4 years ago. I lived way out of town, but close by neighbors. As a quick background, my dad had been charged with a crime and was later exonerated, and our next door neighbors didn't believe his innocence and thus have been harassing us in total. The police at this point were useless and stopped coming to our calls. We have been having creepy things happen for a while, including having people creep in our windows, people parking on our property and watching us, and footsteps outside our windows at night. But at that point, I was too scared to sleep without the blinds closed because I was worried someone was going to watch me change clothes at nighttime. All this came to a head one night. We had just gotten groceries, but it was dark. We were bringing the food in when my dad saw a shadow from the top of our roof. We had a ladder on the side of the house for some roof repairs. From inside, my mom heard footsteps on top of the roof, and so did I. My dad yelled at us to stay inside the house, but me being stupid, I ran outside to help my dad. We heard clanking as the guy ran down the ladder. The guy gave chase, so did I. Being in better shape since my dad had just gotten surgery, the guy hid in some bushes and I couldn't find him. I got the creeps that he was closer than I thought, and this was all part of his plan, especially when I noticed a truck just on the other side of the bushes. I pulled my knife out and began checking my surroundings. Just when I heard some twigs snap, my dad caught up. The guy took off towards the truck and peeled off before either of us could catch up. We called the cops, but they didn't even open a case. Creepy stuff happened since, but we installed security cameras and various booby traps on our porch, so the cops would have to take us seriously, and eventually it tapered off. I have no idea why he was on our roof. My only theories are that either he was trying to break in and saw us drive up and didn't think he'd make it to his truck on time, since we have a clear view from the road to the bushes, or that he was trying to lure one of us away from the house. Either way, fucking creepy. The things in the roof. This happened last year, but it was not until this year that things became disturbing. I used to live in a big house, a Queenslander at notes for its design. It was an old wooden home with 2 levels, propped up by a separate dwelling underneath it. I lived with my girlfriend upstairs. It was just us for the majority, though she did have a roommate. We rented, and our real estate agents told us there were possums in the roof, which wasn't uncommon, and we did hear them every now and then. Usually fighting and screeching like no tomorrow. Sometimes we'd hear them scurry around, which was also not unusual. It's only when night came around did sounds become more unconventional. One thing possums don't do is scratch or knock. They have rather soft feet and are not known to scratch or make any sort of noise like that. But every few nights, we would hear scratch and knocking above our heads in the bed, and at the same time, it was very annoying. Then some nights, it was a little bit stranger. It was in the roof itself, rather than the walls, and it was the distinct sound of walking, but not plodding of 4 feet, but the plodding of 2. It sounded like a slow walk from one end of the roof to the other, like a small person walking. There was a weight to it that sounded too human to be animal. Possums were small and nimble and rather hard to hear unless they really cause a ruckus, right? We largely ignored it because none of us were game to actually check the roof through the manhole. I often make jokes about there being gnomes in the roof, so none of us took it seriously. It wasn't until we began to move in out that we noticed something about the manhole that was not the same as it had been before. There were a lot of hand and feet footprints all around it. We used to sleep in that room and would stare at the roof a lot, but never did we ever see any marks on it. I am still not sure who or what exactly was in that roof, but I never want to ever find out. Roof man. Okay, some context. I'm a 24-year-old guy, and this happened to me about 6 months ago. I live in a rather large apartment complex, one that is very open and social. People are always outside, waving to each other, having drinks and barbecues, stuff like that. It's quite a safe place, with people looking out for each other all the time, and if anything happens, everyone is usually in the know. Anyways, I live at the higher part of my building, very close to the roof. In fact, there's a door near my place next to some stairs leading up to it, so it isn't that hard to get up there. I personally have only been able to get there once before, and after this I don't plan on going up there alone again. It was about 8 at night, and I was on my computer checking my emails, as well as just relaxing and browsing different sites. Well, at that moment, my internet decides to up and shit itself. Now this is pretty common, as I use my building's Wi-Fi and does this at certain points. This would be okay, but I was reading about three important emails and couldn't check the other two at the time because I hadn't opened any other tabs, so I decided to head outside, around to another building at a friend's house, who I know. They're really nice about letting me use their internet when things like this happen, so I'm getting up to leave my place, and I get out into the hallway when I hear a thump up above, on the roof. This didn't surprise me that much though. I thought it was probably someone up there drinking or just hanging out. Sometimes it happens, so I get to the bottom of the building, and I'm leaving, and I hear a loud rattle from the roof. I look up, and I don't see anything. I brush it off as a random person on the roof who fell or something like that, so I continued walking. A few minutes later, I'm nearing my friend's building, and I hear a nearby bush shake. I'm getting a little weirded out at this point, but I dismiss it as a cat or a lizard moving around in the bush and just keep walking. I arrive at my friend's place and sit down on the curb near the entrance. I pull out my phone, unlock it, and go to my email, and continue where I left off. A few minutes into reading it, I hear another rattle, like at my building, only now it's here. I'm getting an increasingly bad feeling about this, but I keep telling myself it's nothing. About 5 minutes later, I happen to look up at the roof and just startled for a minute. There's a guy peering down at me, crouching. I figured he's just enjoying the view of the place and just happened to be looking at me for the moment. I shine the light from my phone at him, and I can make out some more features. He's wearing tattered pants, a black hoodie, and a mask. One of those white masks you buy at a party store. Only on it, it's drawn a really large smile. Now, this creeped me the fuck out for a moment, but again, I give myself an excuse to brush it off. I laugh nervously at the guy and just go back to reading. I look up a few minutes later and the guy is sticking his head out over even more. I'm starting to get scared now. This is beginning to feel like some horror story. It's just me and this guy out there. And I really didn't know what the fuck he wanted. So I decided just get up and to just walk back to my place. I get back with no trouble and start laughing by the time I get there, thinking about how silly I was. The guy was probably some prankster trying to scare me or something like that. So I'm in a good mood, walking to the entrance, and I look up. And immediately feel all my good mood drain away. That same fucking guy is there. Only now he's on my roof, in the same creepy manner, staring down at me. I figure he must have run over when I left and gone on top of the roof before I got there. So I'm just standing there frozen for a moment, and this guy tilts his head, as if he's wondering what's wrong. I quickly head inside and try to forget about it, going to my place and locking my door. My internet is working anyways. So later that night, I decided to go to sleep, and I lay in bed for a while. Finally, I start getting sleepy and shut my eyes. A little while later, I hear tapping on my window near my balcony, and I get up to investigate the noise. I go to my balcony's glass door, pull back the curtain, and immediately scream. The guy, who I'll call the roof man for obvious reasons, is fucking hanging from the roof, staring at me upside down. He tilts his head and I'm standing there, frozen, wondering what the fuck this psychopath came from. What he does next frightens me more. He climbs down onto my balcony and knocks on my glass door like he wants in. When I don't comply, he starts banging lightly. This process escalates until he rams into the glass full force, cracking it. But this time I'm scrambling up and unlocking my door to get the fuck out of there. I open the door and go out quickly as I hear the glass shatter. I shut the door and run down the hall and bang on a neighbor's door. I hear my neighbor come to answer and look back at my place down the hall to see my door open and the roofman peeks out. At this moment, my neighbor answers and looks at me worried. I point down the hall and he looks. The roofman is standing there staring at us. He suddenly breaks into a sprint, running at us crazily. My neighbor pulls me into his place quickly and closes the door. A couple seconds after, we feel loud banging at the door, much louder than my banging earlier. We look out the peephole and sees he's relentlessly ramming the door. The door holds up though, and after a while he gives up and runs off. We call the cops, and they search the complex for him, but he wasn't there. I don't know what scares me more, that horrific night or knowing he's still out there, and he could do that to me again, or potentially someone else. My neighbor kindly allowed me to stay at his place for a while, saying he understood and that if something like that ever happened again, he'd have my back. I can't thank him enough. So, now, here I sit, still at my neighbor's place, relaxing and watching TV. I haven't seen the psychopath since that night 6 months ago, thank God. So, Roofman, let's not meet again. The late night crew. To start, I go to school in Boston. For privacy reasons, I'm not going to include the name of the school, but if anyone reading this also goes here, I think you'll be able to figure it out. So at the end of the spring semester last year, one of the dorm buildings on campus was closed for renovations. Since then, construction crews have been constantly working on completely stripping the building and redoing it entirely. Lately, it's been a bit of an issue, because the dorm I'm living in now is right next to it, so residents are often woken up very early in the morning to the work being done. In response, the school set up a meeting for students to voice their concerns to the project manager and members of the administration here. Obviously, nothing can be done to stop the construction. They just want to make it look like they care and are trying to do something about it. I'll get back to this later. Anyways, on a few occasions, I've seen workers doing work right outside my window. That's probably like a 20-foot gap between my room and a part of the building, having all the construction being done, so I have a really clear view of anyone out there. If my window opens, I can hear them talking. I never really thought too much of it. I expected to see people there. The weird thing is that sometimes the workers show up really late, like between the hours of 12:30 a.m. and 2 a.m. late. I usually notice because I see flashlights moving outside my window and hear the door that leads onto the roof opening and shutting. At first, I was a little weirded out by it. Why would they be up there that late at night? As it continued though, I just started ignoring it because I figured it was just some late night crew or security that went up to make sure nothing was out of place. As I very recently found out though, that is not the case. About a week ago, I was lying in bed trying to fall asleep. Suddenly a brief flash lit up the room. I looked around for a minute and then it happened again. I looked out the window and realized it was just the workers walking around the roof with flashlights. I ignored them and tried to fall asleep. Before I can even close my eyes though, I heard a conversation ensue. "He's sleeping," a deep voice said. "Yeah, looks like it," responded another voice. "Tonight?" asked the first voice. No, let's wait a little longer," said the second voice. "Whatever you say," said the first. Soon after, I heard the door shut and peeked out the window to see both of them had left. I stayed frozen in my bed for a while, wondering if they had been talking about me. I eventually told myself they were just talking about a friend of theirs or something, and I had nothing to worry about. I closed my eyes and fell asleep. When I woke up, I was still a little worried, so I asked my roommates if they've heard or seen those guys out there. Both of them thought I was joking, but I assured them that I was very, very serious. Both said they had no idea what I was talking about. They didn't come back for another week, but before I saw them again, I decided to attend the sit-down the school had set up. When it was my turn to speak, I asked about the late-night crew. I wanted to know why they were up there so late, and if it was entirely necessary, as it was preventing me from getting a full night's rest. The project manager just stared at me for a minute. "Late-night crew?" he asked. "Yeah, the guys who come there sometimes really late and just kind of walk around with flashlights," I responded. He stared at me for another minute or so. "We don't have a late-night crew," he said in a quiet voice. No one said anything. Everyone was staring at me. Finally, someone from the administration said that it was maybe homeless people who had found way up the roof and were using it as a shelter, and that they would keep a better eye on the entrances to the building at nights. There are a lot of impoverished individuals in the area, so it sort of made sense. The only part I was still confused about was that the people aren't staying up there all nights, but just for 5 to 10 minutes. I decided not to mention that part. That was 2 days ago. I didn't see anyone that night, but last night is a different story. Same as usual. I was lying in bed trying to fall asleep when I heard the door open again. This time though, there were no flashlights. Very slowly, I straightened my neck to get a look out the window while still remaining hidden. I saw 2 figures standing on the roof facing my window. Nothing happened for about 30 seconds, and then one of them said something. I recognized the 2 voices as the ones from before. Their conversations went a little like this. "Do you get that email from Bill?" Bill is the project manager. "Yeah. Looks like it's not gonna work out, huh?" "Guess not. You think he's listening right now?" "It's possible." "Are you? Can you hear us, buddy? Are you listening?" At this point, my heart was practically beating out my chest. I didn't know how to react. I just stayed in the same position, completely frozen, hoping they would just leave. "Cut it out. We really shouldn't be here much longer." "What? I'm just messing around." "But yeah, you're right. Looks like this is goodbye, bud. Don't worry, though. We'll be seeing you around." After a brief moment of neither of them speaking, they both turned to the door and walked away. I didn't sleep much that night because of that. I don't really know how to handle something like this, and if I should bring it up with the school again. Based on what they said, it seems like they won't be around anymore. Still, though, these guys know where I live. I can only hope they haven't seen my face, but I think I'll be avoiding the construction area for a while.